Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. Go make your food uneatable then. I got a job in construction as a laborer when I was fresh out of college. My mum would pack me food to eat in the break room which I stored in the fridge. Someone would steal it and I'd be sad and hungry. When I caught the guy doing it, he laughed. What are you going to do about it? The guy was a contractor while I worked direct. There wasn't much I could do about it. My workmates told me to just ignore it, he'd be gone in a few weeks anyways, but I was fuming and a little hangry. I confronted the guy, his workmates didn't say anything. He laughed and ended things by saying, go make your food uneatable then. This brought me down a rabbit hole that would consume the rest of my life. I went straight to the shop and bought out the hottest hot sauce I could find on the shelves. I added it to everything I took to work. I ended up liking it so much I started using it at home too. The guy called me a prick for spiking my food, and it never disappeared from that site again. I started using more and more hot sauce, before realizing I wanted more. I wanted hotter. I bought some hot sauces online. Psycho Juice. If anyone is interested, I started by buying some 70% red Savina. I moved on to 70% ghost pepper and eventually Carolina Reaper. I became obsessed with the high I would get from eating it. I started buying everything hot I could find. Popcorn, pork scratchings, nuts, fudge, chocolate limes, spice rubs, capsaicin extract. You name it, if a hot version exists I've probably bought it. I added it to all of my food. I go to restaurants either with a jar of spice rub or a bottle of hot sauce. I added ghost pepper flakes to my cooking. Anything not chilied wasn't edible for me. My friends and family thought I was insane. Fast forward about 10 years. I'm still into chili. I've moved industries a few times and changed jobs many times. My food has disappeared one other time. All the people I work with know. A new guy came in and stole my food. They accused of spiking my food and trapping them. I got a laugh out of listening to my friends laughing at him saying, dude, he does that with all of his food. The lads love it when I bring in some weird Carolina Reaper snack. I've had 2 people with tears streaming down their face chucking UTC milk warm from the cupboard. I've just finished growing my first ghost pepper plant. I bought a bottle of Blue Dragon Sriracha, chopped 2 chilis up fine and added that to the sauce, which is what prompted me to make this post. This all happened because someone stole food from a 18-year-old laborer. Story 2. Recreated a Grey's Anatomy scene to insult my father's mistress. I'm 35M. My dad, 67M, separated from my mom, 68F, a couple years ago. He's a drunk and cheated for years. My mom found out he had been traveling for work and actually had been meeting a girl, 40F, from his old neighborhood. This girl knew my dad was married. Once he moved out he made his relationship with this woman official, they moved in together, he even financed her new shoes business. My mom and my dad still have a business together, they're still married for insurance reasons, they see each other every day, my sister still talks and has dinner with him once a month. He still drinks every weekend, he asks my mom about how me and my sister are doing, he still finds his way to get invited to the family Christmas parties and pretty much nothing has changed for him even though he cheated and left us. So I decided to cut him off my life cause it enrages me so much that there are no consequences for what he did. I have no contact with him whatsoever. Every now and then he texts me for my birthday or when there's an important event in my life and asking me out for dinner, but I just don't answer. My dad is pretty much dead to me. So, the other day I was at the mall and run into him and his girlfriend. He said hi to me, gave me a hug and when he was about to introduce me to his girlfriend, I pulled my best Addison Montgomery from Grey's Anatomy and went, you must be the cheating WH*re who's been screwing my dad. She was shocked, started crying, run away and my dad went after her. I received a lot of stares at the mall and left. 2 days later, I've received many texts from my dad, my sister, and even my mom, saying I should apologize to the woman, which I've ignored. Posted to r/amith buttface. Story 3. Boundary Fence. I moved into my house a few years back and quite frankly, didn't have a pot to in, my mortgage and bills saw to that. Hag-faced neighbor went on and on about me putting up a wooden fence in the garden even though she had two massive trees practically on the boundary line, but I did it to shut her up. One tree subsequently came down in a storm and wrecked part of my fence and posts, so I asked her to pay towards replacement and she said I'm under no legal obligation to pay towards it, so I thought foo. So I left the gap in the fence and just put bits of plastic mesh, anything really to denote the boundary. Fast forward a few years, the rest of the fence came down and I had a chain link fence put up. Well, she went into a hissy fit because she realized I could see into her house. She scuttled round to my house and said she would pay half towards replacing the fence, and I said I'm under no legal obligation to put up a wooden fence, and anyway I wanted to buy a brand new BMW. She ended up shouting at me while I worked in my garden, so I told her to FOFF. She paid to have a fence put up. I'm not a horrible person, but she brought out the worst in me. Story 4. Dishonest University Deputy Vice Chancellor. I was an executive recruiter and was engaged by a very large, non-US, university to hire a director for their technology transfer team. I was paid 1/3 up front. After working on the brief for 6 months, it was a seriously tough one to fill, mainly because the salary was poor. I was still chasing a signed contract. I guessed, correctly, that the deputy vice-chancellor of the university hadn't got approval to engage me, but figured that he was senior enough to ensure I was paid. Fast forward 9 months, and my client, the DVC, resigns and is replaced by a woman who immediately cancels the assignment. They had already met 6 candidates, but 5 withdrew, and one candidate, let's call him Carl, refused to fund himself to move internationally. There wasn't much more I could do, so I went on my way. 1 year later, 24 months after I had started the assignment, I find out through a network that Carl was in the role. They had gone behind my back and hired him, this time paying for his relocation. I made contact with my lawyer, an employment specialist, and told him everything. I said I had no signed contract. He asked, "Do you have proof of the work you did?" Indeed I did, about 500 pages of records including Carl's, and all 6 candidates, formatted CVS and consultant notes. My lawyer met their lawyer, who absolutely exploded at the new DVC's dishonesty and unethical behavior, and eventually the university's Senate approved my payout of about 2.5x the full recruitment fee, minus my lawyer's costs. Story 5. Caps Lock. I work at a place where everybody works with caps lock on, cruise control for cool. They don't need to, even though our logins are initial caps, and it's easier without. But they do it. I'm civilized, so I turn it off. Point 1 manager, though, resents me for it, heavily. I must have caps lock on. I tell her no. Power tripping ensues. So she took apart the caps lock key, thinking that this will force me to use all caps all the time, bending to her caps lock will. Reboot. Caps lock is off and she can't turn it on because she destroyed the key. She hasn't used the computer since. Story 6. Give me attitude and wrong information. Fine, I'm unable to find your item, it's not in stock. Let's start by saying I've worked a lot in the food business. This time I was working at quite a popular, expensive cooking store some of you may know. Part-time job for extra cash for a few months. I worked in the back for stock, worked the front and even taught some cooking classes. Anyways, let's get into it. I'm working the front. Regular-looking suburban mom comes in and is asking about ready-made, tikka masala sauce you need for Indian food. Except she's saying tiki marsala. It was busy and loud in the store. I asked her to repeat herself and immediately she had a major attitude and serious look on her face. I instantly knew the correct name is tikka masala. Tiki and marsala have nothing to do with Indian food. I look in the store, in the back, we did have some, but I didn't tell her. I go to the computer to search inventory and see if it's in stock. When I typed, I play dumb and ask her to spell out tiki marsala. She's being rude, treating me like an idiot. I tolerate it. I say politely, sorry, I'm unable to find your item, it's not in stock. She instantly walks out with an attitude, doesn't say thanks, blank look on her face, and no sauce for her that day. Story 7. I returned my neighbor's new laptop to the shipping office. My neighbor and I aren't friends, but we wave when passing in vehicles or walking. About a year ago, my wife had ordered something for one of our kids and it was delivered to the wrong house. Our house numbers and mailboxes are very similar and easy to confuse. Picture 668 and 688. After a couple days, I called and they sent me the photo taken of the box on my neighbor's porch, so I walked over to retrieve it and was told I brought it back to the shipping hub. I was heading in that direction anyway. When I asked why he didn't either text me or just walk next door, he didn't have an answer. Okay, very frustrating. It took 5 more days for our item to arrive, lol. Well, on Friday afternoon I'm WFH, and I see a box is delivered to my porch. I go out to get it, see it's his package. On the small return portion of the ship label it says, Lenovo, 1-day rush, and the shipping sticker says like $31.39. My neighbor assumably ordered a laptop by the weight of it and rushed it over. I picked it up and went straight to the shipping center, after all my errands were done, so I was walking in at 4:50. Didn't want to risk they would try to redeliver it before end of day. Yesterday he comes over with the photo of the box on my front deck to ask if I have his box and that it's important, and I respond I brought it back to be redelivered. He looks almost enraged and says why. I said that's the exact same question I asked you when you did it previously. Just thought this was what you wanted going forward. LOL. He was walking down my driveway, shaking his head extra dramatically, but what's good for one should be good for all, no? Story 8. New driver doesn't learn very quickly. Not sure if this fits here, but let me know your thoughts. A company I used to work at had full container deliveries of raw product regularly throughout the year. This was all through the same supplier, shipping company, and container truck service, and had been for years, so we had a standing request on our account that the containers were delivered doors forward so that we could unload them. The 2 drivers with the trucking company, both great guys, knew about this and always obliged. They then took on an additional driver, and he was a surly old bastard who flatly refused to spend the 30 seconds at pickup to check the account notes and therefore correctly load the container doors forward. The first time he delivered I pointed out it was backwards and he had to go and drop it out in the street, turn the truck around, reload and then deliver to us. All in all about 15 minutes wasted effort because he was too lazy to check the delivery notes. The second and third time this also happened, and each time he got grumpier when I politely pointed out he wasn't following our service request. The fourth time he delivered, you guessed it, container was the wrong way again. Once again I asked him to go and turn it around again. He lost it and started yelling and screaming that he didn't have time and this was costing him time and money, they are paid per load, not hourly, and hurling abuse at me. I've had bigger uglier assholes than him have a go at me, so I just let him rant and left him to unload. I already knew the best way to knock him down to size. The trip back to his depot to load up his next job took about 20 minutes. I waited 18 minutes before I called his dispatcher to ask why our request for doors forward hadn't been followed. The lovely dispatcher said she would find out and call me back. 5 minutes later she called back to apologize and say the driver was on his way back to remedy the situation. About 20 minutes later he pulled into the yard absolutely fuming and picked up the container, took it out, turned it round and then correctly placed it back in our yard. Never said a word, just glowered at me. 5th time he showed up incorrectly loaded again. I went out and said you can either go and spin that outside now or I'll give you an 18-minute head start back to the depot again, and I don't want any crap about it this time. He knew he'd screwed up and that I wasn't going to be a pushover and duly went and turned it around. Funnily enough, after these episodes he finally understood the importance of spending 30 seconds checking notes instead of losing 15 minutes or longer each time he delivered. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.